Good afternoon. Today I will be telling you about remote sensing applications to atmospheric and marine environment. What can be measured by satellite sensor? These are four basic parameters, that is ocean color, the temperature and slope and height of the sea surface and roughness. Those four parameters can be directly measured by a satellite sensor, and each parameter, each component will give you several geophysical parameters. Like ocean color will give you about the water quality parameters like phytoplankton concentration and suspended sediment concentration and dissolved organic matter, etc. And temperature information, you can derive sea surface temperature, and slope and height information give you the geostrophic current information, etc. And roughness, totally it will give you wind speed over the ocean. So first ocean color is retrieved using the visible remote sensing sensor. Then thermal sensor is used. Last two parameters, that is slope and height and roughness, can be derived using the active microwave sensor. So these are the summary of the satellite sensors, wavelength range and their utility. That is visible and near infrared is comprised of 0.4 to 0.8 micrometer, and its utility is to provide the ocean color information and aerosol optical depth information of the atmosphere. And thermal infrared, the wavelength range is 3 to 12 micrometer, and it gives you surface temperature. And microwave consists of 0.3 to 30 centimeter, which gives you sea surface roughness, slope and height, and other atmospheric parameters. So this slide you are seeing different color of the ocean water. One is blue color and another is greenish color, and sometimes the bottom material also visible, and here also some bottom material visible. So why the color is changing? The ocean color study started way back in 1922. That is the first paper on ocean color was published by Sir C.V. Raman on the molecular scattering of light in the water and color of the sea. So this is the outcome of the study. Actually, Lord Rayleigh, who had so successfully explained the blue color of the sky is due to the scattering of sunlight by the molecules constituting the gaseous atmosphere, when he discussed the color of the sea, had stated that the much admired dark blue color of the deep sea has nothing to do with the color of the water, but is simply the blue of the sky seen by reflection. However, Sir C.V. Raman did not accept the above conclusion of Lord Rayleigh, and later explained the blue color of the ocean is due to the scattering of the water molecule. So this slide explains you the Rayleigh scattering, that is forward scattering is equal to the backward scattering. The air molecules scatter, air molecules as well as the water molecules scatter the radiation in the same way. So this graph shows you, this red line shows you the absorption coefficient of the pure water, which is very low in the blue end of the spectrum, and gradually it increases towards the red end of the spectrum. That's why if you have a satellite sensor in the red part of the spectrum, you will get the clear land water boundary. That is, water will appear as dark color compared to the land, because the radiation is absorbed by the water molecules. And the yellow line represents the backscattering. Backscattering is more in blue end of the spectrum, and gradually it decreases towards red end. So combined effect is pure water scattering in the blue end of the spectrum will be more compared to green and compared to red. That's why when we are going deep inside the ocean, which is having very clear water, you will see the blueness of the water. And this slide explains you about the relationship between absorption, scattering and reflectance, where R equal to 0.33 BB by A, that is R equal to reflectance of water, BB is backscattering coefficient of water, A is the absorption coefficient of the water. So this portion represents the blue end of the spectrum, this represents the red end of the spectrum, and this is the green end of the spectrum. So in the pure water, the water color will appear blue in nature, and in the coastal water, normally other substances are present. It turns the blueness into green. So these are the substances responsible for changing the ocean color. One is phytoplankton, another is suspended sediments, and the third one is the dissolved organic matter. So these are the phytoplankton species. They are having different size and shapes, and they absorb the light. Normally blue light is absorbed more compared to other lights, and as well as these phytoplankton species, they scatter the light. So let us go to study study different phytoplankton species. These are diatoms. Another is coccolithophores. They thrive in nutrient poor water, and they are covered with calcareous plates. And another is dinoflagellates. They are having two flagella, that is thread-like structure, and some are responsible for harmful algal blooms, formerly known as red tides. And now we'll go to study the optical properties of the phytoplankton. They scatter light obeying the Mie scattering, where forward scattering is more than the backward scattering. This is the absorption and scattering coefficient of phytoplankton. That is, the green light represents the absorption coefficient, and the red line represents the backscattering coefficient. So the blue light is absorbed more compared to other wavelength region. This slide represents you the summary of the biooptical modeling. In order to use the remote sensing data effectively, we have to study the absorption and backscattering properties of the individual particles present in the water medium, that is phytoplankton, detritus, suspended sediment, and color dissolved organic matter. Then we have to model, that is, we have to relate them to reflectance or radiance. Then after inverting the model, we can get back to retrieve the constituents. So from satellite we will get radiance and reflectance. If we have a biooptical model, then we can invert this model to find out the water quality parameters. Here is the application of a biooptical algorithm, that we have taken the absorption and backscattering characteristic of water, chlorophyll concentration, and we have applied the relationship that is R equal to 0.33 BB by A. And we have changed the chlorophyll concentration from 0 to 5 milligram per meter cube. And you have seen here the reflectance is very high when chlorophyll concentration is 0. And gradually the reflectance decreases as chlorophyll concentration is increasing. But you are getting a hinge point here around 550 nanometer. So if you will take a ratio of blue light to green light, we can get the information about chlorophyll concentration. This is explained by the pigment index. So pigment index is equal to R lambda 1 by R lambda 2. That is, lambda 1 represents blue wavelength range and lambda 2 represents green wavelength range. So you can relate statistically the chlorophyll concentration to pigment index, and you can find out from regression analysis that is coefficients A and B, because chlorophyll concentration is related to A pigment index to the power B. So A, B are coefficients of regression. If you can find out the regression coefficients from the laboratory measurement as well as from the in situ measurements. Nowadays, many sophisticated algorithms are available for the ocean color satellites like MODIS, OCEAN 1 and 2 and CWIPS satellite. Now I will tell you about the ocean color data processing. First, these are the four steps, main steps involved in data processing. That is, the satellite, raw satellite data, we have to carry out the atmospheric correction, then we have to retrieve the radiance or reflectance, ground leaving, water leaving radiance or reflectance. Then we can apply the water quality parameter retrieval algorithm, which is already developed, and we can retrieve the water quality parameters. These are the main steps involved for ocean color remote sensing. Now, we use the source, sunlight as the source for the radiation that is passing through the atmosphere, going inside the ocean, and it is getting absorbed and scattered in the ocean water, and the reflected upwelling radiance passing through the atmosphere again and reaching at the satellite sensor. This is called LW, and water leaving radiance. So this is the clear picture of what is happening when sunlight is falling at the sea surface. First it is getting reflected back to the atmosphere. That is denoted as rho, that is known as a Fresnel's reflection coefficient. So part of the remaining light is entering into the ocean water, and on its path successively it is getting absorbed and scattered, and the back scattered light is again reflected back, some amount is reflected back, and remaining light is passing through the atmosphere and reaching at the satellite sensor. That is known as LW, water leaving radiance. So this water leaving radiance carries information about the water quality parameters. So apart from that, along with LW, the radiance LR and LA also reaching at the satellite sensor. That is, the sunlight before striking at the sea surface, it is getting scattered by the air molecules, and it is denoted by Rayleigh scattering LR. And air also contains small dust particles in the atmosphere, which are known as aerosol, and these aerosols will scatter the radiation in every direction, and you have to calculate the aerosol, scattered aerosol radiance in the satellite direction. So if you will remove the LR and LA from the total radiance that is reaching at the satellite sensor, then you can get back the water leaving radiance to derive the water quality parameters. So this process is known as atmospheric correction. These are the ocean color monitor bands that is present in the OceanSat 2. The band number 1, it is responsible for determination of yellow substance and turbidity, and band 2, that is at 443 nanometer, which is used for retrieval of low chlorophyll concentration, and 490 is used where the chlorophyll concentration of the water is little bit more, and for where the chlorophyll concentration is high, we use 510 nanometer waveband, and 555 is used by almost all retrieval processes, and it is a hinge point also, and it is also used for retrieval of suspended sediment. And 620 nanometer is used for suspended sediment as well as chlorophyll, and 740 nanometer and 860 nanometer both are infrared bands. They are used for atmospheric correction. This equation represents the basic atmospheric correction procedure. That is, LT is total radiance received by the sensor, LR is the radiance due to Rayleigh scattering, and LA is the radiance due to aerosol scattering, LW is the water leaving radiance, and T is the transmittance of the atmosphere. So, if you know the aerosol optical depth, ozone absorption coefficient, etc., you can find out the transmittance of the atmosphere. So, broadly, these are the applications of visible remote sensing to monitor the marine environment. That is, seasonal mapping of phytoplankton, detection and monitoring of phytoplankton bloom, quantitative determination of suspended sediment, and ocean or coastal circulation, surface currents, transport and fate of marine pollutants, oil slicks, etc., estuarine sediments, coral reef, bathymetric study. These are the some of the pictures as seen by the satellite. These are showing the phytoplankton bloom conditions. This is the Arabian Sea and this is the Barents Sea. You can see nice eddies as seen by satellite. These are the patches of phytoplankton bloom. And this is the original CBIPS image without any correction. After atmospheric correction and retrieval of water leaving radiance LW and application of biooptical algorithm, the phytoplankton concentration is derived and the land is masked here, and the phytoplankton concentration distribution in the ocean is seen here. This is the first MODIS Terra ocean product generated by SAC ISRO, and this is the water leaving radiance at 490 nanometer, that is LW, and this is the chlorophyll A retrieved using the biooptical algorithms, and this is the aerosol optical depth that is present in the atmosphere. Another important output is detection of algal bloom. So, where there is a algal bloom seen in the water, you can easily detect using infrared part of the spectrum, that is trichodesmium bloom observed on the Saurashtra coast during month of May. So, this is from IRS P4, that is OceanSat-1 satellite data. And another application of ocean color remote sensing is identification of potential fishing zone. I will be telling you later. Remote sensing of coastal water. The remote sensing of coastal water is a bit complicated compared to open ocean water, because open ocean water contains phytoplankton and their degraded product. But in the coastal water, along with the phytoplankton and their degraded product, you get the inorganic suspended material, the bottom reflectance, and the dissolved organic matter brought in by rivers to the coastal water, and the flora, the fauna of flora of the ocean bottom. So all this radiance that is reflected, that sunlight is falling on these substances, they reflect the light towards the satellite sensor, and they make the optical characteristic very complex. So coastal waters are optically very complex in nature. So to separate each of them, it needs site-specific biooptical algorithm development. This slide shows you absorption and backscattering coefficient of suspended sediment. It is highly varying in nature and site-specific. And this is absorption coefficient what we have observed in the east coast of India, that is U-shaped. The dotted line represents the backscattering coefficient. And after applying the biooptical algorithm, we have developed the reflectance versus suspended sediment concentration. For different suspended sediment concentration range, you get a different reflectance pattern. This can be used to retrieve the suspended sediment concentration from the ocean color remote sensing data. So this is the relationship showing the reflectance versus suspended sediment concentration. That is at the red end of the spectrum, that is around 650 nanometer. The relationship is linear. But as you are going to green wavelength range, the relationship is becoming non-linear. So when you will be applying different wavelength range, you have to take this linear and non-linear relationship in order to assess the suspended sediment concentration accurately. This is the output of suspended sediment concentration from IRS-1C WIPS data, where the sea truth data is collected along the east coast of India near Paradip Port and Mahanadi River estuary. So this is the Mahanadi River estuary carrying a lot of suspended sediment and pouring it into the Bay of Bengal. So we have taken the in situ measurement synchronous to the satellite pass, and we have developed a suspended sediment algorithm for IRS-1C WIPS red band. So this is the suspended sediment as seen by sea WIPS in other coastal areas. The muddy water is confined to the near shore areas, and as you are going deep into the ocean, this is diluted. And this slide shows you the coastal circulation and plume dynamics study using sediment images of Krishna Godavari Delta, Bay of Bengal. And you can see the plume pattern, which is along with the wind direction. And here the wind direction has changed and the plume direction is also like that, but you are seeing here there is a plume extending in the middle of the way. So this will give a clue to understand the ocean dynamics. So these are the patterns of suspended sediment showing large scale sediment transport and circulation features along parts of Indian coast. These data are derived using OceanSat-1 or IRS P4 OCEAN data. So you can see the plume is extending to a large distance from the coast. And similarly, this is the phytoplankton is observed by the MODIS data, and this is the MODIS product that is it shows the winter climatology and of sea surface temperature, as well as this is the chlorophyll concentration, global chlorophyll concentration, where in the winter time the southern region is very productive, greenish color, and in the northern side hemisphere productivity is less. But when it is spring, you can see the spring bloom here, and during summer you see the summer bloom in the western side of the Indian Arabian Sea, and the bloom in the temperate zone has reduced, and again when it is autumn, again this phytoplankton productivity is in the southern side started increasing. So this is governed by the motion of the solar position. That is, when sun is in the equator, you can see vegetation is small vegetation patches, but as sun is moving up in the April and May, the greenness in the vegetation, the greenness on the land increases, as well as ocean greenness also increases, because the water is nutrient rich. Only it was deprived of sunlight, and as the sunlight is they get sunlight, productivity increases. Then we will go to study the thermal remote sensing, where these are the applications of thermal remote sensing for monitoring marine environment, that we use SST for climatological study, then global change in SST, and weather prediction, gas exchange across the air-sea interface, dynamical oceanography, and pollution. So this uses simple the Planck's law, where the radiance is measured by the satellite thermal sensor, and all the constants are known, C1, C2, etc., and lambda is known, and you invert this equation, you get temperature of the object. So we have the water surface here, and it emits radiation, and it is being recorded by thermal sensors. Using several algorithms, we can convert the brightness temperatures into the real sea surface temperature. This is the one of the sea surface temperature retrieved by the thermal sensor from the Kalpana 1 satellite, and we have compared the thermal sea surface temperature derived by MODIS Terra with Kalpana. It is agreeing very well. And this is the MODIS Terra pass, and this is the Kalpana derived sea surface temperature for a comparison. And this is the sea surface temperature derived by microwave sensor, and this is the sea surface derived by MODIS thermal sensor. So a lot of thermal sensors are providing the sea surface temperature, and we can use this thermal sensor data and the ocean color data for prediction of potential fishing zone. So this is the using this thermal data and ocean color data, we can find out the rings and the eddies and the meanders and the fronts and the upwelling region from the coastal water or open ocean water. These regions are identified as a potential fishing grounds, and we can take this data for GIS platform for identification of potential fishing grounds. That is NOAA data and MODIS data. They are providing the sea surface temperature, and OceanSat-2 in a finer scale, it is providing the phytoplankton concentration map. So taking this data, we can go for GIS analysis, and we can generate the PFZ map. And this information is provided by Indian National Center for Ocean Information Service to the fisherman community. Then we will go for utility of active microwave remote sensing of the sea. So first of all, altimeter, which is sending, it is a vertical looking active microwave sensor, which is sending a pulse to the ground while going over the globe, and it measures the return pulse, and the difference in time provides you the height of the satellite from the sea surface. And as it is sending the pulse, we can interpret the waveform of the return signal, and as time passes, if sea surface is very calm and your flat surface, you will get a almost flat return signal. But if sea surface is a little bit rough, the signal also will go down. So in practice, sea surface is rough rather than flat. As a result, the first reflection of the energy commences when the leading edge of the pulse reaches the topmost crest of the waves earlier than the flat surface, but the reflected energy does not achieve its maximum until the trailing edge reaches the lowest wave trough. So in this way, the altimeter is able to average out the effect of ocean waves. This parameter is called significant wave height. So the leading edge slope is a function of the significant wave height. So if you can find out the slope of the leading edge, then you can relate it to significant wave height. So this is the single echo. It is looking like very noisy, but when you will average it 25 echoes, you will get a better picture, and 1000 echoes you will get much better picture. So this is summarized here, that is as a result of random distribution of the ocean wave facets at any instant. Each individual return signal is very noisy, but averaging many successive pulses can reduce this. So there are many sensors, many satellites contain this altimeters, and Topex Poseidon is one of them. And GOES 3 was launched in 1975. Its altimetric system measured sea level with a precision of approximately 20 centimeters, and CSAT in 75 precision of 10 centimeters, and GeoSat was also launched in 1985. Now JASON 1 is there, JASON 2 is also there, and now another new satellite, that is Saral Altica, which is launched by collaboration between France and India for the ocean surface monitoring. And Altica is a innovating Ka-band altimeter system dedicated to accurately measure the ocean surface topography. And this is the this is summary of the altimeter measurement. That is there is ocean bottom, and the marine geoid is in parallel with the ocean bottom, and this is the mathematical surface ellipsoid referring which the satellite is orbiting the Earth, and this departure of ocean surface from the geoid is represented by the sea surface elevation eta, and we find out the slope proportional to the sea surface, which represents the geostrophic current. So as satellite is passing, it measures the height, and the height difference gives you the slope, and we can find out the geostrophic current from this information. And this is the picture showing you sea surface anomaly from Topex Poseidon and JASON radar altimeter. And this is the range information and significant wave height information, and backscattered coefficient information, and sea surface height information from the satellite altimeter. And this is the sea surface height anomaly from Altica. And this is the principle of reflection of incident radar wave from a smooth sea surface. That is incident light, if it is smooth, it reflects maximum light in other direction. It will receive very little amount of backscattered energy. But if the sea surface is a little bit rough, then you will get some amount of backscattered radiation, reflected energy towards the antenna. Further, if it is totally rough, you will get more energy. So the backscattered energy, you can relate it to sea surface roughness, and alternatively you can relate it to the wind speed over the ocean. And if the lighthouse is present somewhere, a building is present, then you are getting a corner reflection, and which is used as a geolocation point in the radar imagery. So the principle of radar is it is sending a pulse, and first it is hitting the house, and the first it get a return from the house, then the second return is from the tree, and this way you can find out the distance between two objects from the radar's backscatter. And following the principles of backscatter, OceanSat-2 scatterometer, which is known as OSCAT, that is having a inner beam of horizontal polarization and a vertical beam of in the outer vertically polarized beam. So they provide you the sea surface wind speed over the ocean, and this data is available in National Remote Sensing Center. You can freely download the data. And this is the product of sea surface wind speed as well as the wind direction retrieved from OSCAT. And this is the OSCAT product during two cyclones, that is one cyclone Sandy, one cyclone Neelam. So this is the center of the cyclone, and the wind speed is higher near the centers. So it is very helpful for understanding the dynamics of the cyclone. And then we will discuss about monitoring of near shore coastal bathymetry using remote sensing tools. And these are the importance for understanding the coastal bathymetry. The coastal bathymetry chart is needed for construction of oil, pipeline, cable companies, etc. And harbor and shipping control authorities also, they need information about bathymetry, and resource mapping agencies, coastal protection agencies also, they need the coastal bathymetric information. So near shore bathymetry can be monitored from the following remote sensing sensors, that is visible remote sensing, LiDAR and SAR. So in the visible remote sensing, two methods are available, that is regression analysis and another is optical model. In regression analysis, the satellite DN count is directly related to in situ observed depth using the regression analysis, and bathymetry map can be generated. In optical method, you need the absorption coefficient of the water and bottom reflectance of the water, and both of these things can be used in an analytical model to give you the water depth. This is the summary of the analytical model. First, sunlight falls on the sea surface, then is transmitted towards the bottom of the sea and towards the ocean bottom. And if you know the absorption coefficient of the water, then how much light attenuated you can calculate. Then if you know the reflectance of the bottom material, that is sand, silt or clay, then how much energy is reflected back you can calculate, and the water leaving radiance will reach at the satellite sensor. So using analytical algorithm, you can find out the depth Z. So this is the output of regression analysis of bathymetry using TM data and spot data. Then this is the coral reef study that was carried out in the Minicoy lagoon, and this is the classification of lagoon of pearl culture suitability. And this is the use of bottom reflectance image for classifying remote sensing image. That is, this image shows you the classification using band 2, 3, 4 without any correction, and this is the classification done with IRS list 4. Correction was carried out for water leaving radiance and bottom reflectance image. You can see the difference between these two methods. And these are field observation carried out in Andaman Sea. These are the underwater coral observations that were carried out during the Sea Truth campaign. And this is the output of coral reef mapping in the Andaman Seas. And the limitation of visible remote sensing is bathymetry up to 30 meter can be surveyed using this method. The accuracy depends on water quality and substrate type. The bathymetry could not be retrieved from high turbid water because the incident light gets absorbed before getting reflected from the ocean bottom. Non-uniformity in the water turbidity and bottom reflectance cause additional complexities with this technique. Then LiDAR. It takes the LiDAR is a optical remote sensing technology that measures properties of scattered light to find range or other information on a distance target. So you know the speed of the light, and the range resolution delta Z can be found out from the difference in time divided by 2. So you can measure the water depth from sea bottom reflectance, and some substances that are present in the water and underwater from the backscatter and the fluorescence. So this is the bathymetry from LiDAR. LiDAR is carried by a spacecraft, aircraft, and there are two laser pulses. One is infrared laser pulse around 1064 nanometer and green laser pulse, that is 532 nanometer. So green laser pulse penetrate deep inside the water and hits the ocean bottom, whereas the infrared laser pulse, they came back from surface reflection. So these two difference can give you the sea surface height. Signal response function, that is surface return and bottom return, and signals from the water column. So this is the chart based on 5 overlapping flight tracks. So this shows you the bathymetry as carried out by the laser. Then these are the underwater pinnacles, geological features that can be observed and mapped by the laser scanning. Then this is the sunken cargo vessel below sea surface in the Baltic Sea. And this is the coral reef channel. And this is the summary of bathymetric LIDAR performance, that is maximum depth up to 60 meter can be surveyed, and the operating altitude will be 400 meters. Scan width, scan swath width will be 220 meter, and challenges are small object detection and identification, seafloor classification, that is either sand, mud, gravel, stone, vegetation, etc., land water discrimination, etc. Further reading, you can visit this website. And this is the SAR image for the SAR for bathymetric study. The advantage of SAR data can be used in the regions such as estuaries where survey ships could experience difficulties. The survey can therefore be completed with a reduced level of risk to the equipment and the crew. And the frequent revisiting cycle of SAR allows the regular updating of maps for areas where bathymetry is prone to rapid change, such as shipping channels subject to strong sediment deposition. So, principle of bathymetric imaging with SAR is the variation of water depth, pressure, tide generated current, and this perturbation can propagate upwards to modulate the pattern of the sea surface roughness. So, if the wind speed is between 3 to 9 centimeter and magnitude of tidal current is sufficiently large, that is greater than 0.5 meter per second, then these surface modulations can affect the backscatter observed in SAR images for the region, allowing the observation of certain bathymetric features. That is, when the waves are compressed, it will give a very light tone, and where there is flat, it will give a dark tone in the SAR imagery. And this is the bathymetric assessment system, which uses the suite of numerical models which calculate a synthetic SAR image from a first Gauss bathymetry. The difference between the synthetic image and the actual image is minimized in such a way as to generate an update of the bathymetry. This process is repeated until the depth values converge. So these are the SAR image where this area shows darker tone, that is very flat and less amount of backscatter, and these are the coastal area. You can see the wave pattern approaching the coast. And after applying the algorithm, you can get the sea surface bathymetry. So coastal bathymetry. Then ocean salinity from SOMS, the SMOS, the European Space Agency Soil Moisture and Ocean Salinity satellite launched in November 2009 is designed to observe soil moisture over the land mass and salinity over the ocean. These key parameters play a vital role in understanding the Earth's climatology. So, for sea surface temperature, for different salinities in 1.43 gigahertz, you get different brightness temperatures. So, this can give you information about the ocean salinity better than 2.64 gigahertz. So, presently the satellites, they use 1.43 gigahertz sensor in the satellite. to get sea surface salinity. This is NOAA NODC satellite map, is a salinity map, and this is SMOS derived salinity map. And another satellites, that is Aquarius, they also provide the salinity information about the ocean surface, which is vital for the modeling ocean dynamics. Remote sensing of the atmosphere. Coming to remote sensing of the atmosphere, we have already discussed about the aerosol, and apart from aerosol, you can get ozone, water vapor, and you can study the weather phenomena using the remote sensing data. This is the definition of aerosol optical depth, which is integration carried over the extinction coefficient over the path ds. So the transmittance of the atmosphere is defined as the exponential of the minus optical depth. So to calculate the aerosol optical depth, you have separate sensors designed to study over land and over ocean. So over ocean, the 865 nanometer is used because ocean is considered as a dark surface for the deriving the atmospheric aerosol. So this is the OCM AOD derived using 865 nanometer, and this is CWIP's product, and this is MODIS product. They are being compared and found to be efficient in describing the aerosol at 865 nanometer over ocean surface. So this is the monthly average of aerosol optical thickness at 550 nanometer from MODIS data. So this is the representing 12 seasons over the Indian Ocean. And this is the AOD, aerosol optical thickness, average aerosol optical thickness, which is found to be high in this region in June and July. And this is the infrared absorption of gases at a different wavelength range. So based on this principle of absorption, these gases can be found out using the satellite data. And this is the absorption cross section as a function of wavelength for ozone. And this is the total ozone as viewed by the satellite sensor. And this is TOMS data, and which is providing global total ozone induction unit. And this is the Antarctica ozone hole as discovered by the satellite sensor. Then this is the website of total ozone mapping spectrometer. Then this slide tells you the principle of retrieval of atmospheric water vapor, that is over the ocean, which provides a uniform cold background due to low emittance of water. Atmospheric water vapor and cloud liquid water increase the brightness temperature measured by satellite-borne microwave radiometers. By exploiting two frequencies, that is around 22 gigahertz and 31 gigahertz, the column integrated water vapor and liquid water content can be retrieved, which gives you total precipitable water. So these are the wavelength range. The absorption is by water vapor at water vapor here, and this is the absorption at 35 gigahertz, and this is the 22 gigahertz, and we can use this two channels to get water vapor. So other microwave channels are also used to get water vapor, and one such microwave is MSRE, and you get water vapor information over the globe. MODIS also provides the water vapor information, and you can see the water vapor, how it is changing over Indian subcontinent. And coming to the weather study, you can see satellite data is used, that is NOAA. This is the picture of NOAA data, which is seeing the super cyclone of the over Bay of Bengal. And this is the reshot image during cyclone Hudud. This is used to find out the inundation area. This is the SAR image. And apart from that, we have another satellite called Megatropic. This Megatropic is an Indo-French joint satellite mission for studying the water cycle and energy exchange in the tropics. The main objective of this mission is to understand the life cycle of a convective system that influence the tropical weather and climate, and their role in associated energy and moisture budget of the atmosphere in tropical region. So tropical region is much more complex. So this satellite provides you a lot of information to understand the tropical system. So they carry sensors like Madrasa, that is Saphir, and radiation Scarab, etc., and Roja. These way they provide information about rain, water vapor, and the radiation budget, and various profiles of the atmosphere. And these are some of the products of Megatropics. Thank you.